everybody, and welcome to this new episode of the For Music soundtrack, the Soundtrack podcast. And today with me I have Mikolai Stroinski, who, among many things, is the composer for The Witcher, one of the composers for The Witcher, and also recently did Diablo Immortal and Age of Empires. So as a gamer and a person who's been listening to your music for quite some time, I'm really happy that you're here with me today, virtually. So hi and welcome.
Hi, George. Thank you very much for this wonderful introduction. I'm happy to be here. I'm flattered that you invited me.
Well, obviously with this introduction, there's kind of no way to, other than start with the game music. So what is game music for you? How do you treat game music?
Well, so there's a game, and me as a composer, I'm asked to compose music for it, and the way I see it is I'm invited to create a special mood, the emotional journey through the experience of playing. You know, it's like cooking, obviously. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's like, how scary do I want the atmosphere to be? How lovable, how heavenly I want things to be. You know, I kind of consciously choose a scale from 0 to 10 and make my choice, make my selection. And then, you know, I make sure it works for the game. And if it works for the game, then in parallel to this, when I feel the game, when I sense what it's about, what is the intention of the producers, of the developers, for the player to feel, then on top of that, I'm trying to add, you know, something extra, some music, so to speak.
And you come from I would say like a classical background.
No, I come from jazz.
Yeah, but you were in classical. I mean, you studied in Berkeley, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I studied film scoring and jazz piano.
Mm-hmm. But which is, in a way, I wouldn't say, for example, ambient music is like a lesser step, but still you have this sophisticated background that in some cases, for example, in my career, when I was studying, there was like this huge dissonance between, you know, academic music, even jazz music, to, let's say, film music and video game music. So it was really hard for me to try to adapt what I was being taught to, for example, this media that the music is supposed to work with. Did you have any experience like that in your career so far?
Adjusting my learned vocabulary to the realms of scoring the picture or scoring the video games.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Well, let's stick to the video game, because scoring linear media is a separate story of mine. You know what? This might sound crappy what I'm about to say, but I've always knew I'm going to do a good job, and probably because I started playing very early on. I started playing on my, you know, what was it? ZX Spectrum computer when I was 5 or 6 years old, more or less at the same time as I started playing piano. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when you get acquainted with something so early in your life, it kind of gets in your DNA somehow. So I was in a deep connection with the way I was feeling, with the way somebody is feeling when plays video games. So I had to match it. And as I was graduating Berkeley, you know, my plan wasn't to get into video games, but it was something at the back of my mind I was thinking of. That would be a cool thing to do, and I kind of want to do it. It's not my goal, but I kind of want to do it.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like a girl in your high school class that's your friend, but you don't want her to be you don't want her to be your girlfriend, but you know, you're so naturally together that, you know, after years, you end up marrying her. It's kind of this kind of story with me and video game music.
Story of my life.
I guess. Yeah. No, I didn't have any problem adjusting it. The very first game I wrote, that was Mousecraft, for an independent studio called Crunching Koalas. It just flow out of me, and it was good from the get-go. Didn't earn any awards, but the client was extremely happy, and I didn't commit any mistakes that a film scorer would naturally commit, like, problems with looping, problems with things repeating too much, and
sure, yeah.
Too many highs and valleys, peaks and valleys, and so it flew naturally for me. I had to speak nice about myself, but that was the case where things really worked out well.
Sure. And when you started answering the question, you said that you don't want to speak about linear music right now, so you want to divide the two topics. Does this mean that all the games that you work on are like adaptive, with adaptive music?
Yes. Well, yeah, even the fact that the music is looping in the gameplay makes it not non-linear.
Okay.
As is the experience of playing the game. So the linear media, I mean, you turn on the music, you turn on the movie at 45 minutes long into the movie. It's always going to be the same music.
Yep.
With the game. No.
That's right. Yeah, I understand. Okay. And is this something that you were taught, or is this something that you came up by yourself?
What?
Well, just this concept, for example, this concept of linear music and how to write music that is in a way repetitive but doesn't get too boring. Because this is maybe the most important thing with games, I think.
Well, boring music, you can't write boring music for anything. So it's like, it's the minimum requirement for writing music for anything, right? It can't be boring.
I always try, but sometimes it doesn't work out.
Keep trying, George. One day. Yeah. No, of course, I'm kidding. Sorry. So what's your question again? How do I make it so that it's not boring even though it's looping?
Yeah, and just the whole concept of the video game, because it is different. Because in a way, let me give you an example.
Sure.
For instance, I struggle with video game music, and this has been the thing that I'm doing the past couple of years. And since I've had like more than 10 years of working career in the film industry, I really find it hard to kind of write for video games, because the whole experience is a bit different, even though I'm a gamer.
Interesting.
Yeah, because the film music, in a way, you have like like a hook that drags you to the whole project, because you have the picture, and the picture is always going to some direction.
Yeah.
Linear, as you said.
Yeah.
And the video game, it's different. So as you said, every time it's going to be different. So how do you make the approach? What is your approach, for example?
Sure. Well, have you ever tried scoring a picture, but not a moving picture, but a screenshot from a video game, a poster of a video game?
Yes, in a way. Yeah.
That's what's helping me a lot. And sometimes in order to propose a music for a game, whether I'm applying for it, demoing for it, or I already have the project and they want something from me, I ask them for screenshots, and those talk to me. So that's one way. Second way is, again, feeling as a player. It's a combining those two mindsets, being a composer and then at the same time being a video game player. I don't know if finding a right definition for it, right, framing the words in a correct way will help anybody. It's all about feeling. And if you spend enough time with both music and video games, then if you have some talent, then it will happen to you. Now, I'm convinced that, not every film scorer, a person who from the start was really into scoring really into scoring films and TV, and all of a sudden he gets an idea, I kind of want to score video games too. That's not an easy transition. That's, your primary goal is not telling the story in the background. It's something else.
Yeah, that's right. 'Cause On the other hand, it will be for example, cutscenes will be much easier once you've worked with like film and picture and cinematics, obviously. But the rest of it, the whole journey, and also, do you know yourself? Do you know, for example, Wise or Fmod?
I know them, yes.
To what extent?
Well, I know them to the extent of what's possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm lucky enough to have always somebody else doing this.
Yep.
There's somebody at the studio doing those things. But, I'm still planning how the music will work in a game, which part will be interactive and so forth, and how to translate it into, music vertically or horizontally, like whether it's going to be stands or chunks of music, what kind of transitions there will be, and so forth.
Can you explain a bit about this process, about what you said, vertical versus horizontal?
Sure. So part of you asked me a couple of minutes ago, how is it so that the music for the video game, despite looping, is not boring? And you can design a loop that's not boring, meaning you're aware of repetition, you're aware of the fact that the loop itself is one big repetition, and you compose to this. But even more important than that is the interactive part of the music composition. So you have to design it from a movable cells, interactive cells, interchangeable cells, and those cells can change while being stuck on top of another in layers. Mm-hmm. There can be any number of them. One is not layer, but 2, 3, up to 10. There are some projects, and they interchange depending on what's happening. What are the actions of a player? They interchange amongst themselves. One gets away, the other one enters, and so forth, and it all happens in a smooth way, thanks to those engines that you mentioned, Fmod and Wise. And so that's one way. The other way is, tracks are jumping from one to another. You know what I mean? Like, I remember playing this Naughty Dog game. What are the Naughty Dog games? Please remind me, George.
The zombie one?
No, not a zombie one. Zombie one is great.
So not the last Uncharted. Uncharted, maybe.
Uncharted, yes.
Yeah,
I remember playing Uncharted, and I remember playing Naughty Dog's Uncharted, and there was a scene when you go back to your childhood memory and you run, and you're encouraged by the story to run on top of the rooftops, and you jump from one rooftop to another. And even though the story in the game was telling you to hurry up, the fact, I kind of got away from this gaming mindset. I got away from immersion, and I analyzed the music of what's really happening. So nobody was chasing me, and the timer wasn't running. So I didn't have to. The fact is, I didn't have to be rushed in. So I analyzed some music, and the way it worked is like I was on one rooftop, and then there was a short loop. 2 4-bar loop. As I jumped to another, in the mid-air, there was the transition was happening, and then on another rooftop was another section of music looping. So, because usually the player in 99%, unless he's a video game composer, will not analyze it and run through the rooftops. He or she will not notice those 2 4-bar loops that will be repetitive once you stop and listen to them, 4 or 5 times. So that's, there is a minimal risk involved.
Okay, so now I'm gonna take you to a more like philosophical question.
Great.
About on top of this topic. So, for example, the video game soundtracks that I've kind of like loved. Obviously, I've listened to a lot of Warcraft and StarCraft, the original one, and Brood War, Diablo, which we are going to speak about as well, and Baldur's Gate 2. So in a way, they have a very straightforward, so a very linear approach to music, and they obviously, I know them, because I've listened to them quite some time. what do you think would happen if, let's say, we are talking about adaptive music that doesn't have that much of a, for example, melody? So you have a lot of stems, and so you have like a drone. You enter the dungeon, there's like a drone, then you get closer to the boss, for example, and percussive layers start to come in, some rhythmical sections. So when you play this, it's great with the experience of the gamer. But what happens with the soundtrack release afterwards? How much of the music do you remember as a listener in terms of like melody, hooks, and development?
Allow me to rephrase. Are you asking me how do you construct a piece for soundtrack from all these movable parts? Or
yes,
and something else?
Exactly, and more essentially, how does the listener associate that soundtrack release track from the bits and chunks that he or she has been listening to? So imagine listening to just a certain amount of like layers, and then you open the soundtrack and it's different. Because it's the suite, so to say, that you've listened to is always different based on the way you play.
I don't think a listener, player and listener will have amazing memories with a drone, right? Because drone is
exactly, yeah.
It's a mud, musical mud. There's nothing happening, and the drone doesn't have any musical events. It can loop and loop and loop. Now about constructing musical piece out of all these cells, that's a separate task. I focus, and I'm pretty sure everybody else focuses on constructing the best listening experience. We switch from giving the best possible gameplay experience to the best possible listening experience, right? So a couple of years ago, I released a soundtrack for Sniper Ghost Warrior 3, and I was really, really happy with the music. And the way it worked was there was exploration music as you approach your target, something hopefully not boring, loops and loops and loops. And then whenever artificial intelligence, which in the vocabulary of video game designers is called AI, approaches you or, is in the risk of spotting you, there's another layer coming in. And this layer has to be, it has to work with the music underneath, but at the same time, it has to convey a very strong information about, possible danger.
Yes.
And, I was happy with both. So on one hand, there is this quasi-ambient, let's say, that there were fair amount of musical events in those ambient tracks happening with which I was happy. And then this AI alert loop on top of that, which was also cool to me. So which one do I feature on soundtrack, right? This AI loop was very repetitive. So I just entered in a couple of spots here and there.
Sure.
Feel free to listen on Spotify. I'll be happy if you do. So yeah. And if you construct those pieces from all those chunks and glue them together.
So in your mind, as a composer, when you write the music, do you think in the chunks first, or do you have like a more global approach? Here's what I want to do. Here's the themes. Now let's break it down into small chunks. Or here are the small chunks. We need to do this and this and this. Now it gets bigger, and let's develop this in a certain way.
The reference and the point of focus should always be a gameplay and a video game. And whenever my ego chooses to focus more on music, on creating something meaningful musically, before I score, I make a focus on scoring the game, then I lose. Then my music loses. It's interesting. And if you give the crown to the video game, if you give it the priority and connect with the video game fully, then everything pays off. And you've got the overall arc. Everything makes sense. together. And as far as composing in chunks, those things have to be planned in advance.
Yes,
you got to have a Excel sheet of all the tracks and how are they constructed.
Mm-hmm. And you've also scored for picture, for TV. Is your approach there? Obviously, it's different. So how does it differ?
A completely different person scores that. When after I graduated at Berkeley, I became a ghostwriter for reality shows.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them. I helped one or two composers in Los Angeles, and scoring a reality shows back then. I don't know what it looks like now. I haven't done it in 12 years, I guess. Was kind of similar to scoring animation, because you have to illustrate everything that's in the picture. Somebody gets bad music, somebody gets happy music, and so forth. So that prepared me actually for successfully scoring animation, believe it or not. I have some awards for animation scoring. But how do I score TV? Good question. Well, so my recent one is called, I think it's Queen. It's a Polish one.
Yeah.
But it did pretty well on Netflix. It's about a guy in his 60s that's very sophisticated person living in Paris, and he gets a letter from his granddaughter of whom he hadn't known, that he's needed back home in order as a kidney transplant donor to his daughter, whom he left many years ago and lost contact with. And on top of being the sophisticated, what's the word? Somebody that does clothes. Help me here.
Tailor.
Sophisticated tailor. In Paris, he is also a drag queen. He sings. He dresses as a woman and sings on the stage. So he gets back to a very small town in Poland and deals with it's a story about a family reuniting family. It's a really nice TV series. Culture clashes, family clashes, and so forth. So actually, the best music that I composed for that was after reading the script. My best tracks in the series, and those are actually the ones I recorded at your studios in Sofia, are the ones I composed while reading the script and not seeing the picture. So I do have an answer for you. My approach, my favorite approach is, if I can, not watching the picture too much, not having the picture in front of my eyes while I write music, but instead having my imagination lead me, and then seeing how the fruit of that connects with the picture, and then, if needed, making adjustments. Obviously, there are some shows which need scoring to picture, millimeter by millimeter, especially if it's action, right?
Yeah.
So that.
My approach has been slightly different. I have this weird book next to me with different themes. I'm not. We're only recording audio, so this wouldn't make any sense to anyone listening. But so I'm writing themes and story arcs. One thing that I find I don't do it, but I find a reason for it is. Do you know Robin Hoffman, the orchestrator and composer from Germany?
No.
Yeah, well, he's a really nice orchestral, composer and orchestrator. He works at worked at Dynamedion, so you kind of have close connections in a way. So he did this series called Daily Film Scoring Bits, and every day he just puts a random thought about music. And many years ago, he put a thought out that when you're scoring a picture, you should always start at the climax of the story, because that should be the most heavily dense, musically.
Yeah. Excellent idea.
Yeah. So in a way, I try to do this and sketch it out, but then I always try to picture. I rarely do what you do, which is bad in a way musically, because when you're just writing music based on a script, you're focusing on music. And I have the themes, I have the harmony, blah, blah, blah. And then I just focus on music to the picture. So maybe it's, yeah.
You said it's a bad approach. I don't think it's a bad approach. I think it's a different approach that bears different fruits.
That's right. Yeah.
And you know, who knows, maybe my next one I'll approach as you do.
Yeah.
Just to see what's happening. You know, if you have the time and you can allow yourself to experiment, then, you know, that's a different way of painting music around the picture. Interesting.
Yeah, well, and sometimes I don't even do this. The thing about the great thing about film music and game music is that every project is different. It's not like
that's true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so.
Absolutely. And it's good to remind yourself about it. Yep. Not to repeat your old tricks and
exactly
always be fresh and grow. Yeah.
And, now, because you opened the topic of ghostwriting, and I've been in a similar boat. So, what are your thoughts about ghostwriting?
I think it's a good start for a lot of people. I think there are reasons to complain about it. The reasons are because human nature is so that it always wants more. Like, I remember when I first started in 2004, I was so happy and my family was so proud of me that I would be, you know, writing television music for all these shows around the world. But then, you know, you kind of gradually expect something else, something more. So now I ask some people to help me as well if I have an overload of projects. And I don't know, I always try to do it so they're happy, both in terms of financial reimbursement and artistic challenge. If I can give at least one of those things, then sure. I think they're happy. I not always can reveal to the producers who is helping me for different reasons. I mean, you understand, building your career with credits to your name, that's something very crucial. And so we have to be careful not to dilute it with other names to project. On the other hand, you know, giving is great, right? The act of giving is great. So one has to find a good line for doing that. What can I say? I think a couple months ago there was an article in Variety about that. At the end of the day, it's a contract. Nobody is forcing young composers to do it in case they have complaints. And I do believe if you're a composer, established, well-off composer, you know, maybe it's a good idea to share. You know, if you have a well-paying project, then, you know, maybe you pay a little bit more to people who help you compose. I don't know. There are different composers with different approach to it. I've heard different stories about the biggest ones in Hollywood, how they tackle it. And again, you know, what I told you before, the ones that are writing best music and are sort of getting Oscars every now and then are amazing, and their ghostwriters love those guys. Whereas the other ones that I told you about, it's quite the opposite. So,
And do you find that, for example, I'll give you an example, like for example, The Witcher. Sure. How do you, even if it's not ghostwriting, even if it's like an assistant trying to help you out, how do you, in this unique musical world, sound world, how do you accomplish this?
Do you relate this question to ghostwriting?
Not only to ghostwriting, but even like working with other people, because but this, I think this also applies to ghostwriting or to music. If you have something like a project that is so unique, how can another person do something in that regard? Well, I mean, they try to. Sorry to say this, but they kind of try to copy your work in the first season of the Netflix show. but it's not the same, you know.
Well, first and foremost, the score for The Witcher 3, there were no ghostwriters. It was
of course,
only written by.
I wasn't implying that.
That's okay. That's okay. But some people might have different thoughts. So it was fully written by myself and Marcin Przybyłowicz. Now we used one of the reasons the score is unique is we partnered with the band Percival.
Percival, yes.
With the Percival band. So in a way, they are also composers for that, right? Because they supplied us with their pre-existing music and certain musical vocabulary specifically recorded for this project. Now, if I have a project like this that requires a lot of music to be composed, and I have other projects to compose, let's say I have an assistant who sits next to me and who is familiar with the music. And so if there was a situation where I cannot focus on this particular project, I make sure that this person gets the job done very well, meaning he composes music, but I tell him all the spices that he has to use, all the harmonies, possibly all the themes, and then I supervise the production, that it sounds the way it's supposed to sound.
But again, the more, I would say, the more unique a project gets, the harder it is to do stuff like this. Do you agree?
If you work with composers, young people are very talented and educated these days. Currently, for instance, my assistant is his name is Alexander, and he's a jazz person like myself. So he gets the harmony very easily. Right? He understands it. Like, of course, certain textures he might not be used to what I would come up with, so I'll tell him use this on top of that, and those things work well with each other, and so there's that. And if not, I'm open to some variety.
Yeah, which would essentially maybe change the sound of a project.
Well, if it's just one of two tracks out of 20.
I've been in a situation like this where I had to ghostwrite music that was very unique in terms of a sound, and it was really hard for me to grasp, because I could get the harmony, I could get the specific chords, melody, of course, specific chord structures, but the rest of it was so uniquely done, and there were a lot of custom recordings, so there were no samples. There's also something that as a part-time sample developer, there are no samples of Percival, so
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so it's really hard to come up with something like this. But and you spoke about jazz. What's your favorite jazz album?
Oh, I can't tell you my favorite jazz album, but the ones that started it all for me, that started music, is Oscar Peterson, Night Train.
Ah, okay, nice.
But it's well behind me. I remember when I was in my teens, I would fall asleep to it. And then when my child was born in 2012 and he couldn't fall asleep, I would play him this album again and he would fall asleep to this. Now, I abused this technique. And so, I changed my approach to this album after doing so. It is something else to me now, but I'm forever grateful for it. And yeah.
Mine is, I would say, Kind of Blue.
Oh, yeah.
And I like the other stuff that early Miles did. Don't like the late Miles Davis. That's not my thing. But there's something kind of cinematic about this album. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. They both Night Train and Kind of Blue are late night listening jazz. Yes. Like 3 a.m. just before it gets bright again outside.
And do you still play like somewhere live or
no? No, I don't perform live. No.
So tell me about a bit. Yeah, I'll get you back on The Witcher.
Sure.
Were you in a way involved on for example, the concert, the live concert?
Some of them.
Some of them,
but not all of them.
That was Piotr who did the orchestration.
Piotr, yes, Piotr prepared the orchestrations for the live concert. He also has to be mentioned as a composer for one of the extensions of The Witcher, which is Blood and Wine.
Yes,
he did a wonderful composition, wonderful music.
You also did music for Blood and Wine.
Yes, the three of us did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an amazing video game, I would say.
Thanks.
The one that has not only like good visuals, also good storytelling, good storyline. I'm also a fan of the books.
Yeah, I'm so glad you read them.
Yeah, I read them in Bulgarian. So
yeah, I read them in Polish.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know what the translation is, but I like them. They're really nice, and I think that the music is very into the project, so into the whole universe. It creates its own language, kind of like when you think of Star Wars, it's the music, kind of quasi like opera style, like over the top, music. That's Star Wars. Lord of the Rings, you have this dark orchestral,
That's true.
And you have what you guys did for The Witchers, which is
that's true. I'm happy it happened.
And what about Diablo? This is another favorite game of mine. So.
Diablo, the recent one. Yes, it happened by surprise. I was invited by Formosa Interactive studio in Los Angeles because they were reached out by NetEase.
NetEase, okay, NetEase, yeah.
So so NetEase reached out to Formosa Interactive in Los Angeles, and they wanted me to compose music. I am on Formosa Interactive roster of composers. And so I was very flattered. And so Diablo has always been my, dream to compose for. And so I did. I wasn't the only composer. There were others. I have to be honest about it. And
did you guys communicate or?
No, they were hired independently of me. Like,
sure.
I was given some chunks to compose for.
I'm also not sure whether everyone who's listening to this podcast will know the amount of work that's usually been done in video games. So how many minutes of music did you have to write for Diablo?
About 25.
25. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is there a specific approach to, because essentially it's a mobile game?
Well, not only. It was from what I know, it was supposed to be a mobile, and then it received its own live on PCs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But since most of the people do play it on mobile devices, did you have any sort of specific mixing technique or something like this, especially for phones? Or
no. And even the mixer that I used, Steve Kempster, did not take this into consideration. My guess, those things were done in mastering in the game developers studios.
Nice. And all those projects, they, we talked about Percival, and they added a lot of unique flavor, for example, to the soundtrack of The Witcher. But do you think it's important to work with live musicians, like, for example, a live orchestra?
Yeah, naturally. It's life. That's kind of how I approach producers. I tell them, okay, samples can be great, but it's like a musical Frankenstein, right? It's
yes.
Things are thought together. Whereas if you use a live musician, if you hire a live musician, then you have life in your music, and then music is more immersive, more emotional for your game or TV or film. So it's always better. It's always smoother. There is live. There is breath. There is more dimension. So much more you can do with a live instrumentalist.
Yeah, so many benefits. And what would be do you think the challenges? Let's say with working with an orchestra.
Well, budget.
Okay,
that's one. Yeah. Secondly, this is not something you can do by yourself. You have to, hire orchestrator, hire recording engineer, conductor, and all the musicians. And, one can obviously make use of services like you, George, provide, which makes it much easier. But still, you have, all of a sudden, you're not alone. You have to be in communication with other pros.
So do you think that a composer nowadays should also have his toes dipped in also production, like mixing, mastering, also a bit of orchestration, so that of those processes, even from above?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I think we all do. I think anybody who is not, that's how it is, right? I mean, all these young composers, they leave those musical colleges and they have their heads stuffed with theory and great music, but many of them suffer from not being able to mix and to produce well. If they're, classically trained, then the production will be something that they have to work on. So, yeah, it's like, I always think of us composers as a characters from a video game, like Baldur's Gate. This the guy has magic on 7, strength on 4, wisdom on 5, and speed on 1.
Yeah,
and it's about bringing those. You can either hope for bringing all these stats up, or you can just leave this guy as a barbarian. So he's always going to suck at magic, but at least he will be strong and good at using hammer. So it's that.
So he's the perfect conductor, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. The conductor is a wizard, right? Casting spells.
Now, I have another question for you, which it's going to be, again, a weird philosophical question. First of all, I want to speak a bit about the LA thing. Do you think it's important to be in LA? And second of all do you think that your European heritage, like Eastern European heritage, gives you a specific voice, and is this a strength or a weakness in, for example, a metropolis like LA?
It's a good question. I'll start from the latter. The Eastern European part is only a small part of me. And some of you already know I was born in Kenya, and then I was in Warsaw between the age of 5 and 21. And then when I was 21, I migrated to Boston, to Berklee College of Music, and then 3.5 years later to Los Angeles. So I have all this in me. And even when I was in Poland, I was into Western music. Yeah. I started off listening to Beatles. I've never listened to European music. Beatles are kind of European, one might say, but not really, because they listen to American music, right? Yeah. And then I was heavily into jazz, Oscar Peterson, Miles Davis, Wes Montgomery, all Americans. So, some might say that, how can I put it? Some people might like my melodies. Okay. And I think maybe this melodic approach might be the European part.
Yes.
Chopin, stuff like that. But it's a guess. I don't know. Now, has it helped me to reach a unique voice? I even up to now, I don't think I have a unique voice. Some people just tell me I do have a voice. You
do?
You do? Okay. So yeah. That's basically what's happening. I'm telling that I don't, but people are telling me that I do. So it's hard to really relate in that respect. Now, as far as Los Angeles, oh man, I love Los Angeles. In a way, there is no need to answer this, because if there's a person who has a strong engine to succeed, this person will go there no matter what I say, right? And if the person is kind of, not sure what they want to be, and they maybe want to score film projects and maybe video games, then I don't think they'll go there. But Los Angeles teaches you professionalism, the highest standards of it. It gathers the best of the best in all the professions. So it's even if you're there only for a little bit, it's nice to get used to this level of professionalism, of work commitment, and so forth. Los Angeles is also a place where work is the highest truth, or work is the highest value. There's nothing more important than work.
Yes.
And that's great and not great, I guess, because, well, life shouldn't be about work only. That's what I say. But, people in Los Angeles might not agree with me. So,
yeah, the reason I asked this is because I've personally turned down some invitations to go there.
Why?
I don't know.
Too scary?
No, unlike you, I don't like LA that much. Yeah. Or maybe I'm just too in love with Bulgaria and all its problems, because it has a lot of problems. We won't have time in the world.
Which country doesn't have problems?
That's right. Yeah, in a way.
Even those holy countries like Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, they do have problems as well. They're just more underneath.
Yeah. But I've heard this said to me once. Hey, you should come to Los Angeles. You're from Eastern Europe and you have this unique musical voice, so you'll be successful. Which I don't necessarily agree with it, because if my music sucks, no matter what voice I give, even if it's like South African or I don't know.
Well, if you think your music sucks, then you have a problem, right?
Yeah.
Do you?
I think it could be better, and I'm always trying to learn. Obviously, I love what I do, but I always strive to be better at certain points, whether it would be orchestration or synth work. I see that you have a bunch of synths. You're a synth lover.
Yeah.
I
do.
With me.
Oh, you want to compare?
Oh, no. You have you have way more than me. Yeah. Nice. All right. So for example, I was when I was doing the video game Surviving Mars, I knew nothing about synths. So for me, synths were just like you open a preset and then you press a key, and then you don't like it and you choose a different preset. And I'm not that much of a synth person, but I now know enough that I can kind of replicate what I have in my mind with
Right.
So, but this is, this is what I was telling about, trying to kind of develop, because I know everyone knows their weaknesses, I suppose, most of the people.
Possibly.
Yeah, and we try to kind of evolve as writers. So I don't think that necessarily you have to be there, in LA to, because now the world is much more open in a way.
It is, and you can get projects from all over the world, as many of us do. But still, what I said still rings true, that this is a place where you learn professionalism like nowhere else. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to say something not too flattering about our area of the world. But both in Poland and in Bulgaria, there is a certain level of tolerance towards mediocrity.
Yes, I could.
Right?
I could agree to that. And there's also something that, for example, here in Bulgaria, we here at the studio, we are like soundtrack nerds, probably the people who would listen to this podcast, and there may be 3 or 4 people outside of this team who not only have the skills, but are also interested in this type of music and, in orchestral writing and writing music and just striving to make some cool things, blending, get people that get excited about mixing like a synth with a chamber orchestra. But we are like 10 or 15 people. And in LA, we can make a meetup, of composers meetup, and there would, like 100 people would come in, and those people will kind of bring everyone up. Everyone will bring everyone else up the chain, like evolving as a musician or
it's a creative kind of competition that's out there. Also, something that's not too present in our in Poland and in Bulgaria. Post-Russian influence.
Yeah. What did you say? Tolerance towards mediocrity.
Mediocrity.
Mediocrity. Yeah. I like this. I like this. Yeah, in a way, that's
It's good enough,
yes,
right?
yes,
It's good enough.
It's good enough.
Why make it bad?
Yeah, it can be applied not only to writing music but also to performing music, recording
everything.
music, and yeah,
building roads.
Yes. Oh, don't get me started on this. Yeah, you've been to Bulgaria, so you know. All right, and now I think as an end to this podcast, I want to give you 3 blitz questions. So the first one would be very generic in a way, but I would really love to hear what your 3 most favorite and most impressive soundtracks for you would be, either film or games.
Medal of Honor by Michael Giacchino, Diablo, the second one, Assassin's Creed, the second one, by Jesper Kyd.
Aha, okay, gotcha. All right, yes, good suggestions.
And I'll give you more. The film-wise, Ennio Morricone, Cinema Paradiso. But yeah, that's it for now.
Nice. And now you say you said my favorite soundtrack is Diablo, and then you worked on Diablo. So my next question would be kind of pointless, but still, what would your dream project be?
Pixar animation, and as far as video games, probably full-fledged Diablo. I'll tell you this. Possibly Assassin's Creed, but I'll have to think about it. Right. I'm not sure how they are turning now. I haven't played them for a while. I'm basing my dream on those early ones.
Well, I have to tell you this. So my wife she gave me a gift for one of my birthdays. So she gave me. It's not that was a couple of years back. So she gave me Assassin's Creed Origins, I think, and it was like a DVD box. So I put it on the shelf, and I was like, okay, but I need to finish the games that I've already started, which were Horizon Zero Dawn and God of War. So I played Horizon, then I finished Horizon, then I finished God of War. That's throughout, because I don't have much time to play nowadays, so this took quite some time, you know what I'm saying right now. And then I played Ghost of Tsushima, and then I decided to open Assassin's Creed, and I just opened it, played a bit, and said, whoa, this game, it doesn't seem like it's like a contemporary to the other games. It feels like it's from like 20 years back. So I just put it back on a shelf, and that's it.
Oh, you mean in terms of the gameplay or music?
Yes, I didn't even pay attention to the music. I mean, the gameplay was so awful. You know, the story, really? The voice, the voiceovers, the acting, everything was. I mean, compared to the other games, so it felt really weird for me. So I just was like, okay, yeah.
I see.
Maybe I should give it another chance. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I don't have any opinion because I haven't played it.
Okay, and the final question would be, what would be your advice to younger Mikolai?
Younger Mikolai, to myself?
Yes. Don't
be afraid. Have a clear idea of what you want to do and follow this. And, well, that's you want it to be philosophical, so I'm going to give you one. Don't listen. Don't treat your thoughts as your own.
All right. Nice. Thank you.
So, there's that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for this podcast. I really enjoyed it. Hope
Thanks,
that you did as well, because it was more like a discussion about music and about, you know, again, getting a bit too philosophical. You know,
not enough philosophical, I think. But I really enjoyed it, George, and I thought, and I really enjoyed the questions. Really well prepared.
Thank you.
Well-formed questions. Yeah.
Well, next time it should be with a glass of beer.
All right.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
All right.
With pleasure.
All right. Thanks.